Welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right, thank you, Enrique. So as Enrique mentioned, I'm Madison, and welcome to our second ever Startup Grind Fort Lauderdale event. We're so excited to have Andre Melo here today at Broward College Innovation Hub. Andre is originally from Rio de Janeiro, and he's started 3 companies so far, but also while continuing to be a civil engineer. And he's got some really great ideas about the on-demand economy and some excellent advice for entrepreneurs, especially those that, weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth and have to finance themselves. So he has a lot of value to add, and I'm really excited to hear from him. So with no further ado, welcome, Andre.
Hello, everybody.
So why don't you just start by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and when you decided you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Sure. So, as Madison said, I'm a professional engineer. I've been working in the field for about 15 years. And, my mid-20s, I probably decided that climbing the corporate ladder was not for me. Something that I just didn't see myself really dedicating myself to. And that, so slowly I started not necessarily coming to the conclusion that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but slowly I started moving in that direction, and a lot of the choices I made ended up pushing me in the direction. And so I've started 3 different companies. I have my own engineering consulting company. I tried a social network for volleyball players back in the 2000s, and that failed pretty quickly. And then, Foodozel.com has been my latest venture, and I've been at it for 3 years, and it's been a long fight, but there's been a tremendous amount of learning that I've done in the past 3 years. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that, the previous failures that I've had have actually catapulted me and it moved me forward instead of pulling me back. So the failures that I've had have served to strengthen my convictions about trying it better and not making the same mistakes.
Along those lines, so what were the mistakes from your former companies, or are they both completely done, or what caused them to fail if they did fail?
Well, the engineering consulting firm was essentially funding uvolley.com, the volleyball social network. And so as soon as one company is not doing well, the other one's not doing well either, So, but the engineering consulting firm, it was an opportunistic thing. It's something that I did and that I was making pretty good money after the hurricanes. And so it's a service that comes and goes. And so instead of just blowing the additional money that I was making through my consulting firm, I decided to invest it and start, playing around with entrepreneurship. And but what caused me to caused the social network to fail was my lack of financial planning, my lack of looking for a specific distinction from, the major social network, which was Facebook. So why would anyone go to my volleyball social network when you can have your volleyball friends on Facebook just the same? So there wasn't that distinction, and there wasn't that financial planning to sustain the business aside from the revenues that I was making from my other company. So those are valuable lessons that once you close down business and you reflect on those mistakes that I make, and have really enabled me to plan a lot better on my next venture.
So what have you done differently in the next venture? And maybe you could also start by telling everyone a little bit about Foodozel, how the idea came about, and how you're financing it and everything. Absolutely.
So Foodozel, I guess I'll start talking about what Foodozel is, and essentially is an on-demand delivery of restaurant food. So instead of having to call restaurants or having only a handful of restaurants that you can choose from, our platform allows you to order online from any participating restaurant. And so in Boca Raton, for example, instead of 6-7 restaurants around your neighborhood, you can order from 50. Now, if we go back to how I've made I've planned the financial aspect of the business extensively to make sure that I didn't make the same mistake I made with Uvalli. And so it can go back so far as to when I bought my house. I have a 4-bedroom house, and once I started for Ozel, guess how many rooms I had rented, so other aspects of it were really just to how do I need to be in this for the long haul. So I can't have a planning window that as soon as my money is out, I'm out of business, because to start a business, it's really to just fight for survival. Most businesses fold up in less than 2 years, and so from the very beginning, you have to plan on how you're going to make it, how you're going to survive, how are you going to get to that milestone of keeping the lights on. At what point do you are your revenues sufficient to pay your operating costs? And so let's say that you do your projections that you can get to it in 6 months. Well, those are projections and assumptions. Real life is a whole lot different. So if you think it's 6 months, add about, multiply it by 2 or 3 times, and that's a more realistic expectation of when you can get that milestone. And so that's been, I think one of the most important things that I've learned, and that, I can actually attest to having been able to execute so far.
Great. Can you tell us a bit about the on-demand economy and how Ozel fits into that also? Absolutely.
And this is what really excited me back in 2012 when I conceived the idea. It was really just, recognizing that there was a clear customer demand for convenience and delivery service. And whereas, being from Brazil, where we can have in Rio, you can have just about anything delivered to you. And that's a third world country. And here in the U.S., where it's a much more convenient society, we didn't have delivery service as readily available. So I started thinking about it and why, asking myself, well, how come that we don't have these services over here? And I came to the conclusion that it was, mostly labor costs. And so I kept on, mulling through the questions, and then, came to the conclusion that it was, smartphones were able to address the labor costs, because now you can provide delivery a lot cheaper. You can cut out the dispatcher, so like Uber is disrupting the taxi industry, because they can operate and provide better service, faster service at lower cost. So how can Yellow Cab possibly compete? And so this is back when I started, and now, now there's conferences about the on-demand economy, and, you can categorize the on-demand economy into 4 different segments. You can look at transportation, which is, clearly headed by Uber. You can talk about real estate, which the clear leader right now is Airbnb. And then there's 2 other segments that haven't blown up yet, so to speak, and they are the service industry and retail. And so while I'm saying that it hasn't gone yet, it's already happening, but there hasn't been an explosion of it. And those are the next ones that I predict, or that I think a lot of smart people, investors out there, are banking their money that it will. Since the, so to speak, beginning of the on-demand economy, which is around 2010, there's been almost $10 billion of investment from venture capitalists around the world. And that amount of investment has been increasing year over year. So last year, I think there was $4.3 billion that VCs invested in on-demand startups. And so it's a hot market, and, I'm just clawing to try to get a little piece of the pie.
So there are other on-demand food apps in the country and in South Florida. So how do you differentiate yourself from the other ones, and are you looking to the future to try to expand it all? Absolutely.
Well, the stage we're in right now is when I launched Ozel, I launched within the restaurant segment because it provided the lowest barrier to entry we could sign up local restaurants fairly easily so that we can begin developing the technology. Then once we've launched and lost a lot more hair running the actual delivery operations, the next challenge is to figure out how do you scale a company like this nationally when there are so many challenges to managing deliveries. And so that's pretty much what I've been focused on over the past year. And the solution is really purely technology play, and by partnering with larger retailers and essentially facilitating the transaction between the local delivery operators and the retailers. And so that's basically a new company that is a B2B company that I'm launching right now that builds off of the Food technology they already have and benefits Food. So it's a completely new venture. So if anybody is just starting a business here, I'm on the same step you are on.
So you say retail. What kinds of stuff can you get? Can you order a hat or scissors or
pretty much. I mean, retail is such a giant market that anything you can imagine that you can need on a day basis. So our focus right now is on more essentials. We started with food because people eat every day. So other things like groceries, anything that you have to do or go and get on a daily or weekly or a monthly basis, that we are able to apply our technology to facilitate that and cost effectively bring that to you. That's an opportunity there. And so there's a lot of other new companies that are vying, and what you have to do is just pick a niche and go for it. And then once you're successful in one specific niche, you can expand into other areas of retail.
So what's your niche?
Well, I don't want to talk too much about it.
Sorry. Getting a little too invasive.
But it's just retail in general. I think we're going to focus on essentials and things that, obviously a bigger objective is to get into grocery delivery, but that has a number of other logistical challenges with it also. So, be it, pharmacy, retail, Home Depot, anything that we really can get a hold on. And we're working with a couple of leads right now that can possibly get us some deals.
And so how do you compete with somebody like Amazon.com, where people can order things and they come, a day or some? I think they're developing something where they can arrive that day, even in an hour. Right. Yeah. How do you compete with someone like that that's well established?
Well, that's a tough question right there, right? But how do you compete with a monster? No, I'm just kidding. No, absolutely. I don't know that I have the full solution. I don't know that I have the right solution, but I believe that the only way that you can compete with a monster is through partnerships. And so one of the basic principles of my company has been one of partnering. And so if we're partnering with multiple retailers, different types of retailers, we're not going to, be working with retailers that are in direct competition with each other. But if we have a group of retailers that have their own buying power, their own marketing power, and their own market share, and they in fact need to defend against Amazon, because if they don't have a solution, an on-demand solution, an e-commerce solution that can put up a fight against Amazon, they're going to lose market share. And so that's really our approach. That's how I believe that we can help them defend their market share and help local operators get a piece of the action.
Sounds very smart.
Well, it takes. We'll see in a couple of years if we can implement it.
So, what advice would you have for somebody thinking about starting their own company?
Well, think very hard before you start. It's something that is exhilarating. It's something that is extremely difficult. It's something that pushes every boundary that you have, and in some ways I'm still asking how I'm still here today. But the biggest advice I would say is really just planning in the beginning when you're at the conception phase of your business. you're full of excitement and you just want to start running at it and channel that excitement, but do it in a grown-up way and plan it out and do a financial plan and go through the exercise of building a business plan. You don't have to make a super fancy business plan, but go through the process of building it, because all of this planning that you can do up front validates that your original concept, your excitement is something that is worth going after. And it also helps you put together a plan to pay for it, because you know, people are not just going to throw money at you. You know, you have to, or some people are good salespeople and they can go and get investors behind them, or they have the pedigree to do it. I've had to do it on my own, and I think most entrepreneurs out there have to do it on their own. And if you remember that 9 out of 10 startups fail because of undercapitalization, you have to find a way to pay for it, and you have to find a way to sustain it for as long as you can until you can take that next step. And so that would be one of the biggest. And then just go at it. I always call it also relentless pursuit and constant assessment. So once you put your plan together, you relentlessly pursue that plan, but you have to constantly assess where you are, what kind of traction you're making. You have to have metrics and milestones that you want to get to, and you have to always be assessing where your position is relative to the market, where to the competition, and really whether or not you're competitive and you're going to be able to make it. And it's not a constant, like, should I quit? Am I going to win? No, but you have to be aware and have to be mindful of the space that you're in and your true chances of winning. And that's where you every day make a decision to continue to do it, or it helps you adjust and pivot and change certain things that you're doing so that you can be better prepared to succeed in the end. And it's not all about success. That's another point that I think is very important. Like I said, I've had 2 businesses that failed, and I think I'm much better for it. And that's something that now that I'm doing fundraising, I'm learning how to speak to a new audience of investors. And so you have to understand what they care about. And some of the things that I've read are that investors actually like entrepreneurs that have failed before, because it also shows that you're not some crazy ideological kid. You're grounded and you've been through the gauntlet before, and you're going to be a better steward and take better care of their money. Somebody that's just excited about something is not a safe bet, and so don't be afraid to fail. But do a lot of planning so that you don't fail quickly. Learn something before you fail.
So you mentioned to me yesterday that you actually were a pretty good volleyball player.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that?
Well, that was, it's actually good that you bring it up, because, in talking about quitting, that's something that was probably the hardest thing to quit for me was, I had my passion, and how was it Bill Gates that had that commencement speech about, follow your passion and everything is going to be all right. And well, I don't agree. I think it's kind of bullshit. Follow your passion, absolutely. And volleyball was my passion. I had success in college. I had just started to break into the pro tour, and on the same year, and while moving forward with my engineering career, and on the same year that I started making it into the pro tour was the year that I quit. And it blew, like, some of my the people around me, they were just blown away. They're like, well, hold on, you've been working this hard to get in, and as soon as you get in, you quit. And it's because of this constant assessment that I kept doing that, I was like, now I've proven to myself that I'm good enough to make it on the pro tour, but can I make a livelihood? Will I have the quality of life that I'm looking for by continuing to pursue this path? And so I made a conscious choice to quit my passion and continue to further my engineering career, my business career. And so I think it's a perfect example of when quitting is okay. And quitting is not necessarily losing, but simply looking at the opportunity cost of not quitting. And to me, that was a strong lesson, and I carry it with me to this day, and I'm okay. I still play volleyball, so I'm not that upset.
How did you originally end up in South Florida?
Oh, weather. I'm originally from Brazil, which is a warm climate country, and I grew up in Washington, D.C. area, and so I went to college up there and everything. And so as soon as I was done with college, I was, moving forward with starting my engineering career, but also starting my volleyball career. And so I wanted to go to somewhere that had beach volleyball. So it was either Florida or California, and ended up in Florida. And been here for about 15 years now, and still loving it. I love the winter more than I love the summer, but.
And your wife is also from Rio, but you met her in Florida?
Right, we met about 5 years ago, and in fact, we conceived the whole business concept together. And she's a fighter. She actually endured the brunt of the startup and the day-to-day operations, because I had to keep it, and we made the decision that I should keep my job, because that was a way to continue our revenue stream to pay for our basic expenses. And she quit her job to run the day-to-day operation. So she sacrificed a whole lot for it, and I'm extremely proud of the effort that she put forth. And best employee anybody could possibly have. And
can you explain how the delivery part works? Like, do you have a team of people that drive, or are you contracted out?
Just in case they didn't hear on the video, the question was, can you explain how the delivery part of Ozel works? Do you have hired drivers, or what happens? How does the food get there?
Right. So that's an excellent question. I didn't cover it. We've focused on developing a customer portal that lets the customers place orders online or through their smartphones, which is the first part of the equation. Then we've built out the back end to communicate that order directly to the store. So it doesn't, when you place an order, I don't have to call the restaurant, or one of my staff doesn't have to call the restaurant to place your order. The system automatically places that order with the restaurant, and at the same time communicates the order to the drivers that are out in the field, and then the drivers are able to accept the order and go and pick up the food and deliver it. So instead of having a person manage all aspects of it, it's all automated and instant. So we're basically eliminating a job, which makes the operating cost much lower than a typical delivery company. And makes it faster also and more accurate. So you're removing labor costs, you're removing time, and you're increasing the accuracy of the system.
Do the drivers work for you? Do you have trucks?
When we first launched, we were hiring drivers. So I essentially was running two businesses at the same time. I had a technology company that was that we're building, and I had a delivery company. So we hired the drivers and had the drivers on standby to go and pick up the food. And and I needed to own the delivery company. I need to have full control of the delivery aspect of it, because that's how. It's through those pains, the pain points of the delivery process, that I could build a technology to address that local operator's need. And so as of January of this year, I no longer run the delivery company. I licensed it out to my operations manager under a licensing agreement and profit sharing, so that he is dealing with day-to-day operations. He's hiring the drivers. He is ensuring that the service level and the quality of the service is still there, using the technologies that we've built so far. And so my next phase really is to move out of running this company into more of building a new company, which is Delivery Tech, which targets retailers, so that we can essentially start bringing him more higher, or my original operator and any other delivery company, essentially. So these higher value stores, that will essentially serve as the anchors for the entire delivery zone. Sure.
I have a question. So you keep mentioning you have pretty much a so then you need a company for delivery and a company for other stuff. Why building so many companies instead of being everything under the same umbrella? Or are they associated?
Well, that's a very good question. And for,
The question is, he's mentioned a couple times that there are several different companies, like one company's doing the delivery, one company doing something else, everything under one. The question is, why don't you just have one big company that does everything? Why split it up into different segments?
Right, and that's a very good question. And we haven't had two companies. Fooduzzo has been the technology company and the delivery company, but they are two very different aspects of the operation. There's the technology development, and then there is the day-to-day operations and B2B sales that the delivery company has to do. So as of today, it's still just one company. However, this new solution that I'm pursuing, which is a different company. It uses all of the same technology, but it is a completely different company because of the day-to-day operations that company is, which is essentially executive sales. We're not dealing with delivery staff. We're not dealing with anything. It's B2B. It's technology development, continuing to build the technology, and providing solutions to higher value customers. So it's a whole different mentality, and I could keep it all under the same company, but Fooduzzo is currently operating in the Boca Raton area, whereas part of my scaling strategy is that I can scale my system nationally a lot faster by utilizing other delivery assets than I can by trying to grow a delivery company organically. Does that make sense?
Was there a legal reason to that, or was it more of
The question is, was there? Sorry.
It's purely it's a scalability. It's a question of scalability. If for you to think about how hard it is to manage 10 people, right? How hard is it to manage 20, 100, 1,000? And so there's a level, there's a limited scope that you can manage. Individually, while the technology platform manages, can manage an infinite number of people. So from a corporate structure point of view, it didn't make sense at this point to keep everything together as one. Down the road, it might change, but sure.
I started noticing with a lot of entrepreneurs that they might have that one great idea, and they think that as soon as they implement it, then it's basically they can sit back and wait. But I also see that as a big sort of failure, I guess, on their part, because I see that so many industries are changing nowadays so rapidly that just having that one great idea is not all that it has to be. But have you already started planning on where you're going to take all your projects next, because to sort of evolve with changing times?
So the question is, how does an individual with one great idea compete against established companies that have so much more capacity to develop many different ideas at a time? And so the question was, what is Andre doing to look into the future to try to compete and get ahead of people that are already thinking about the next step?
It's a great question also, and I think that the step or the phase that I'm in right now is exactly that, because my great idea 3 years ago has a lot of problems with it. There's a lot of challenges involved in the delivery service and in the actual from scaling to marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And so what the pivot that I've made and the new solution that I am pursuing with retailers is essentially taking lessons learned from the last 3 years and the challenges of this specific model and enhancing them or being able to address a lot of the problems with this model. While this model is still valid, we're going to pursue, and it goes back to the question about different companies, because it is a different company, but it is a pivot to try to address the additional shortcomings of the first company. Does that make sense?
Go ahead.
As an like what kind of steps do you take in your mind to decide, should I create this myself or should I use something that's on the market and integrate it? For instance, with your delivery part, did you create that whole software for the delivery, or did you use like one of those optimization dispatching delivery, which I've seen before online, where you can literally see, oh, this person is closest, I'm going to send them, or, you know, and you know when they rolled up their truck door and when there's all of that. But as an entrepreneur, when do you decide I'm going to make it myself or just use somebody else's and integrate?
So the question is, as an entrepreneur, how do you decide whether you're going to make something yourself to implement your idea, or just find someone that's doing something similar and integrate that existing platform into solving your problem?
It's another excellent question, and that's something that I actually had to go through back and forth. I think it goes back to what your model is. So if I were to say that my objective was to build a restaurant delivery service, and that was the extent of the model, then the first step that I would go is to look at what's out there in the market that I can license that will function as I need it to run a restaurant delivery service. So if you have a very clearly delineated niche that you're going for, and there is a software solution that already does that, then you just license it and start your business. But then you're not really a technology company either, because you're using off-the-shelf software, which is not scalable. I mean, you can scale it, but you're paying additional for every, the scale that you reach. And for me, I decided that I had to go custom development from scratch, because I knew that there was going to be a lot of modifications that we needed to make, and I wanted to have a technology platform that I could build from scratch instead of having to rely on third-party providers. So to have that flexibility and that control made me go with custom development, which, of course, there's a whole lot of drawbacks to that, because it's much more expensive, much more time consuming, and there's a lot more risk. But it also gives me a lot more flexibility.
I was going to ask you about it wasn't a lean startup, so obviously because you paid for it a lot. So the follow-up question is this: how do you resource the technology getting it built?
I was going to ask the same question. Yeah, how do you resource technology getting it built? Do you hire programmers, or do you hire a third-party company, or how do you get it done?
Well, it's all been outsourcing. Now, that's an excellent question. I wish I had a good answer for it, because it's a perpetual challenge. So I've actually been lucky enough to have found a few good developers in South Florida. I've tried to go overseas. I've tried to go to India, Ukraine, with small projects, and fallen flat on my face on a number of them. But you have to constantly be on the lookout for people that might be able to give you quality product that meets the specifications, that works within your existing platform and framework. And sometimes you just you can do all of the due diligence up front and research you can. You have to kind of go with a gut feeling and say, here, let me give this person a small project and see how successful they are at implementing it within your infrastructure. And if they do a good job, then you can scale. Then you can start giving them more work.
Well, are you a techie? You're a civil engineer.
I am. I'm a civil engineer, so I'm a project manager, and so I'm not a programmer.
So how do you know who's good then?
Well, that's how I've made a lot of mistakes. And
the question was, how do you know who's good? So.
Well, once you know about functionality, and the architect of my software is actually pretty good. He's just not very good at delivering things on time. But he knows this. No, I mean, But it's one of the challenges of technology development. You never there's I think rarely ever do technology projects get turned over on time. So regardless of how much resources you have, even Windows. I have gone through. I've tried multiple different forms of hiring and hiring within and through networks, and to be honest, I don't have a solution for it, and we just keep going back to the ones that have done good work for you, and the ones that do bad work for you don't work with again, and you just kind of say lost effort, wasted money and time.
So you're a tech company, and if you're a tech company, typically you would want to have a tech co-founder, right?
Right.
Theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
So how come you didn't bring on a tech co-founder?
The question is, why did you decide not to bring on a tech co-founder?
Well, I did originally have a co-founder, and then we almost ended up in litigation. And that company, actually, the original company that I hired to develop the platform for non-performance and blowing a bunch of deadlines and a number of other issues, we almost ended up in litigation, and the company has since gone defunct. And so I did start out with a tech co-founder, and then almost took him to court and ended up actually hiring back the main architect that, even though it violated our contract, my contract with that company. But I'm like, sue me, because I'm about to sue you anyway. So let's have it out in court, or we can just call it a day. And I take your programmer, and you took a bunch of my money. So that's how things went. So I'm actively looking for a new tech co-founder. Sure.
Early days, did you use or did you intend to use like an incubator or any kind of support group? Would that have accelerated or helped you?
The question is, sorry, my throat made a weird noise. The question is, did you early on use an incubator or any kind of support to help grow the company?
No, and actually, I wish I did. I think it would have been extremely helpful. And to be honest, I wasn't aware of many incubators in the area, and I was really more, it's part of that excitement thing. I was so excited with my concept that I was just moving forward within the means that I knew how to move forward, and that was from engineering, project management, sourcing, contracting, and and so I wasn't aware of incubators, and now I've gotten more involved with some of the mentors and incubators in the area, and I think, and it has been tremendously valuable in so many different ways that I wish I had, and I would recommend that anybody that's coming up with a new startup, try to look for resources, because that's when you're starting a new business, you need you're going at it yourself, and that's a brave and very difficult thing that you're about to do, and so why not have a support system? Why not have resources that are available at your demand, so that it can help you navigate the million different difficult choices that you have to make, and so I would have definitely gone through an incubator.
Sorry, so when you started, did you do some sort of minimum viable product type of validation before you actually started building or scaling?
The question is, when you started, did you do some kind of minimum viable product validation before you started scaling?
Well, Fiduzo is essentially my minimum viable product, and the validation that we've, and that's, the other reason that I'm 3 years down. I have a minimally viable product, and about $650,000 worth of sales, and it essentially validates the on-demand platform. So. This is really the starting point, whereas in many other companies or startups, you do your minimum viable product early on, and it's taken me 3 years to do it. But then again, I'm building a platform that has a much bigger potential, and so it's a little bit more complicated, or at least, I thought it was. But
yeah. Any advice for startups as it relates to pretty much your largest line item generally is your expenses are usually your employees. So how do you decide whether you farm stuff out, 1099 them, if you actually hire employees? And a step further than that is if you do end up getting VC money, how to kind of decide how much of your soul you're willing to kind of give away.
So the question was about controlling expenses, particularly payroll, since that's usually one of the biggest ones for startups. How do you decide whether you're going to 1099 somebody, hire them as an independent contractor, or W-2 them, bring them on full time? And the second part of the question was about VC money. How do you decide how much of your soul you want to give away? Hopefully, you would find the right VC and not have to. But how much of the company would you want to give up? Yeah.
Well, the first part of the answer is easy. I'm a biased answer to it. I'd say outsource it all, because from a business owner's perspective, you're saving a lot of money. You don't have payroll taxes. There's a host of expenses associated with a full-time employee that a 1099, an independent contractor, doesn't bring to the table. The laws are kind of gray around the types of work that can be considered freelance or independent contract labor work, and so you have to be careful about the types of work that you're farming out that way. But I believe that the whole on-demand economy is around this principle of freelancing, and it's not. I'm not talking about on-demand Uber, but the ability to connect a service provider that has a specific need, that has a specific service that a buyer or another business has a need to. It needs something fulfilled, and so if you connect those two and you're able to hire a quality freelance worker that does just as good a work at, or better than a normal employee, then why would you ever hire an employee?
Great.
And I guess the second part of the question is really more of a dance, because it gets into evaluation, and essentially you have to demonstrate the value of the company, which a lot of it has to do with your revenues, but also with the market, and there's a number of different factors. There isn't a specific science to it, but it's a negotiation. So it all is based on the ultimate valuation that you and your investors agree is a fair value, and then however much money you're raising. Based on that valuation is how much you're going to give up, and it depends on how bad you need the money, or how much value the investors see in what you have.
And so far, you're entirely self-funded, right through your salary and everything. Right.
So it was an easy negotiation with myself. Yeah, she was the hard sell there.
All right, well, I guess we'll wrap up here. But if anyone, those are some great questions from the audience. Thank you so much. If you want to come up and ask Andre any more questions, feel free. And thank you so much for coming.
All right, thank you.